Welcome back, everyone. We're diving into something pretty fascinating this time around.
Oh, I'm intrigued. What's on the docket today?
Well, we're going to be exploring these mathematical patterns, these numerical patterns, I should say, that are found in the Quran.
Okay, I'm listening.
And, it really begs the question, are these patterns evidence of, divine design?
Or could they just be coincidence? I mean,
Yeah.
patterns can pop up anywhere.
Right, exactly. And that's what we're going to try to unpack
Yeah,
today.
I'm excited.
The article we're looking at is called The Astonishing Mathematical Patterns in the Quran. Coincidence or Divine Design?
Catchy title. I like it.
I know, right? It really sets the stage. And right off the bat, they point out some pretty interesting stuff.
Okay, like what?
So get this. The word day, right, like D-A-Y, appears in the Quran 365 times.
Wow, the same as the number of days in a year.
Exactly. It's like, whoa, what are the chances?
Yeah, but we got to be careful, right? I mean, the Quran's a pretty long book.
True.
So, statistically speaking, you're bound to find some numerical alignments just by chance.
That's a good point. But here's where it gets even more interesting.
Oh.
The Quran, right? It wasn't written all at once, in one sitting.
Right, it was revealed over time.
Exactly. It was revealed over a period of 23 years and then later compiled.
That does add another layer of complexity.
And there was no editing, like no revision process.
So the consistency of these patterns across a text, revealed over such a long period, that's pretty remarkable.
Right. It really makes you think.
It does. It really does.
And it's not just about, like, individual words either.
Okay, what else is there?
There's this sense of balance, like symmetry, almost, throughout the whole text.
Symmetry. How so?
So, for instance, man and woman,
Hmm.
they both appear 24 times.
Interesting.
And get this, angel and devil, they both appear 88 times.
That's wild. It's like there's this intentional structure, this numerical harmony woven into the fabric of the text.
Right. Like it's almost too perfect to be random.
Yeah. But symmetry is a powerful thing. It's found in art, nature, even in music.
That's true.
So while it's fascinating to see the symmetry in the Quran, it might not be as extraordinary as it first appears.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
Mhm.
So it could be intentional, a deliberate choice by the author.
Exactly. Or maybe even an unconscious reflection of the human desire for order and balance.
Okay, so we're keeping an open mind here, not jumping to any conclusions.
Exactly. We need to consider all the possibilities.
Well, speaking of possibilities, the article really dives deep into this one number in particular,
Which one?
the number 19.
Okay.
And they point to a bunch of examples where this number seems to hold, like, special significance.
All right, lay it on me.
So, first of all, the Quran has 114 chapters, right?
Right.
Well, guess what? That's a multiple of 19.
That's interesting.
Then there's the Bismillah, the very first verse. It has 19 letters in Arabic.
Oh, I see where you're going with this.
But wait, there's more. The sum of the numerical values of the letters in the Bismillah. And this is where it gets a bit technical, using something called abjad numerology.
Okay.
Well, that sum is also divisible by 19.
Now, hold on a minute. Remind me, what's abjad numerology again?
Oh, right. So basically, it's this ancient system where each letter in the Arabic alphabet is assigned a numerical value.
So it's like a numerical code almost.
Exactly. And it was pretty common in the region at the time the Quran was revealed.
Okay, so not like some crazy coincidence then.
Well, that's what we're trying to figure out. It could just be a reflection of the cultural practices of the time.
Right, we have to consider that.
It's like trying to solve a puzzle. Each piece, each number, each pattern, it's all a clue.
And we're the detectives trying to put it all together.
Precisely. And the picture we're trying to uncover is, well, is it divine design or human ingenuity?
A pretty big picture to paint.
It is. It is. But I think it's worth exploring, don't you?
Absolutely, I'm hooked already.
Good. Because the article doesn't stop there. They go on to connect these numerical patterns to, wait for it, scientific facts.
Scientific facts, now you've got my attention.
Yeah. So they talk about the ratio of land to water on Earth. How much of the Earth is land versus water?
Sure, yeah.
That ratio is about 29 to 71.
Okay, that's pretty specific. How does the Quran tie into that?
So, get this. The word land appears 13 times in the Quran. Sea appears 32 times. If you add those together, you get 45.
Okay, I'm following.
And the ratio of 13 to 32 is, well, it's surprisingly close to the actual land-to-water ratio of the Earth.
Wow, that's That's pretty wild. Like the Quran predicted a scientific fact centuries before it was discovered.
I know, right? It's mind-blowing.
But before we go jumping to conclusions, remember, correlation doesn't equal causation.
Right, of course.
It's possible that the authors of the Quran, based on their observations of the world, the world they lived in, might have just used these words in a way that reflected what they already knew.
Okay, yeah, I can see that. It makes sense.
It's important to consider all the angles. Be good detectives.
I agree. But still, this connection is hard to ignore.
For sure. And it gets even more interesting when you consider that the Quran itself seems to acknowledge the significance of the number 19.
Oh, how so?
Well, chapter 74, verse 30, it says, over it are 19.
So it's like the text itself is pointing us towards this numerical theme,
Yeah.
inviting us to investigate.
Exactly, and that's what we're going to do.
So we've got this recurring number 19, right, woven throughout the text, possibly connected to scientific observations, and even alluded to within the verses themselves.
It's a lot to unpack, that's for sure. But it's an exciting puzzle to solve, don't you think?
I completely agree. It's like we've laid out all these puzzle pieces, these clues, and now we need to figure out how they all fit together. And maybe, just maybe, we'll start to see a clearer picture emerge. A picture that could shed light on the big question, is the Quran divinely inspired or a product of human ingenuity?
It's a question that's been debated for centuries, and I don't think we're going to solve it definitively today.
No, probably not.
But the exploration itself, that's what's fascinating.
You got that right. And who knows, maybe we'll uncover some surprising insights along the way.
Yeah.
I feel like we're in the middle of a really good detective novel,
Yeah, full of twists and turns.
Right, and all these clues, these numbers, they're leading us somewhere, but we're not quite sure where yet.
That's what keeps us coming back for more, right? Trying to crack the code.
Absolutely. And I think what's really fascinating is that we can't just brush this off as, oh, it's all coincidence,
No, definitely not. Especially when you consider the whole context, like how the Quran was revealed over time, bit by bit.
Right, over decades.
Exactly. It really makes you wonder, could there be something more here? Something beyond random chance?
It does. But I think it's important to acknowledge, like you were saying earlier, that there's always the possibility of human, intentionality.
Yeah, that's crucial. We can't just jump to the supernatural explanation without exploring all the natural ones first.
Okay, so let's say, hypothetically, that these patterns weren't divinely inspired. How could a human author, or authors, I guess, have woven them so intricately into the text?
Well, think about it. The Quran didn't just appear out of thin air. It emerged from a specific cultural and historical context. And like we talked about with the Abjad numerology, there were certain practices, certain systems of knowledge that were just part of the fabric of life back then.
So you're saying that the use of numerology, it could have been a deliberate stylistic choice.
Exactly. Like imagine a poet using rhyme or meter. It's a way of adding beauty and structure to their work. And maybe, just maybe, the authors of the Quran saw numerology in a similar light.
That's an interesting analogy. So we're saying these numerical patterns, while fascinating, don't necessarily prove divine authorship on their own?
No, not on their own. We got to look at the big picture, the text itself, its historical context, and the potential motivations of the people who wrote it.
Right. It's all about context.
It always is. And I think that's what makes this whole exploration so engaging. We're not just looking at numbers on a page. We're trying to understand the minds of the people who put them there.
And the world they lived in, right?
Exactly. It's like a journey back in time.
It is. Okay, so there's this one part of the article that I keep coming back to.
Oh, which part?
It's the part where they draw this parallel between the Quran's numerical patterns and, get this, scientific facts.
Yeah, we talked about that earlier. The ratio of land to water on Earth.
Exactly. It's like, how could they have known that? It's almost like a premonition. Like they had access to knowledge that wouldn't be discovered for centuries.
It's a head scratcher for sure. But we got to be careful, right? Correlation doesn't equal causation. Just because two things seem connected doesn't mean one caused the other.
Yeah, I get it. But even so, it's hard to just dismiss it, what are the chances?
Pretty slim, I'll give you that. But remember, the authors of the Quran weren't living in a vacuum. They were observant people.
Right, they were looking at the world around them.
Exactly. And they were trying to make sense of it just like we are today. So even without precise scientific instruments, they still had a pretty good grasp of how the world worked.
Okay, so maybe the frequency of words like land and sea, it just reflects their lived experience. Like they were surrounded by water, they saw land, it was part of their daily reality.
Exactly. It's totally plausible that those word choices just emerged organically from their understanding of the world.
So we're back to that balance, right? The divine versus the human.
Yep. We're constantly weighing those two possibilities as we go.
And considering the historical and cultural context, of course.
Can't forget that. It's like trying to understand a painting without knowing anything about the painter or the time period it was created in. You'd miss so much of the story.
That's a great analogy. And
Mm.
I think that's what makes this whole deep dive so enriching. It's not just about finding the right answer. It's about the journey of understanding, of piecing together all these different elements.
It's about appreciating the complexity, the layers, the mystery.
Absolutely. And I think that's something our listener can really appreciate too, you know?
Yeah, it's an invitation to think critically, to question assumptions, and to form their own conclusions.
Because in the end, the Quran, with all its mysteries and intricacies, it's a text that's meant to be explored, contemplated, grappled with.
And that's what we're doing right here, right now.
We're all on this journey together.
And who knows where it'll lead us next?
Wow. You know, it really feels like we've just scratched the surface here.
Oh, definitely. This is just the tip of the iceberg, I think.
So much more to explore.
Right, like we've opened the door, but now it's up to everyone to walk through and see what they find.
Exactly. So for our listener, you know, the one who's sitting there thinking, okay, this is all very interesting, but where do I go from here?
Well, I would say the most important thing is to keep in mind that these patterns are just one piece of a much larger puzzle.
Right. Like we can't get too fixated on the numbers themselves.
Yeah. We got to zoom out, look at the whole picture. The Quran as a complete text, its historical context, all of it.
You know, one thing that keeps coming back to me, it's this idea that regardless of whether these patterns were intentionally designed or just kind of happened organically,
Yeah.
their very existence, it speaks to the depth, the complexity of the Quran.
Absolutely. It's a text that's been studied for centuries, and people are still discovering new things about it all the time.
So it's like, even if we don't have all the answers, the fact that these patterns are there, it invites us to engage with the text on a whole other level.
Right, to think about it, to ponder it, to really wrestle with it.
So any final words of wisdom for our listener who's ready to, embark on their own journey of discovery?
I'd say be curious, be open-minded, and don't be afraid to ask questions. There are so many resources out there, books, articles, even online forums where you can connect with other people who are interested in this stuff.
It's a whole community of explorers, really.
Yeah, exactly.
Hmm.
And everyone's bringing their own unique perspective, their own insights. It's really enriching.
And remember, there's no one right answer here. It's all about the journey, the exploration.
It's about finding your own meaning, your own understanding.
So, to our listener, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the mathematical patterns of the Quran. It's been a fascinating exploration.
Absolutely. And we hope it sparked your curiosity, inspired you to keep learning, keep asking questions.
Because the Quran, with all its mysteries and beauty, it's a text that has so much to offer.
Whether you're approaching it from a place of faith or just a sense of wonder.
There's something here for everyone.
So keep exploring, keep diving deep, and let us know what you find.
Until next time, keep seeking, keep questioning, and keep those brains buzzing.